The Guild is Maximum Lawyers' community of legal entrepreneurs who are taking their businesses and lives to the next level. As a Guild member, you'll build relationships, be held accountable, and learn strategies specifically designed to get you unstuck and accelerate your plan for growth. Members are also granted exclusive access to masterminds hosted around the country. Our next event is coming up, and we're heading to Scottsdale, Arizona. There's something truly magical about the power of these in-person connections where real-time breakthroughs happen. Picture this. You're surrounded by like-minded law firm owners tackling your business and mindset challenges together. The energy is electric, the insights are transformative, and the results are game-changing. Investing in yourself is the best decision you'll ever make. The knowledge, strategies, and breakthroughs you'll gain are priceless assets that will supercharge your practice and propel you forward. Join the Guild and secure your ticket to Scottsdale at the best possible price by visiting maxlawevents.com.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimmy?
This is the first time we've ever had to record introducing ourselves a second time because you were giggling the whole time.
No, it's just we had some funny comments before the show, but we'll leave it at that. So, how you doing, bud?
I'm great. We've been screwing around enough already, so I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. I drove by his office today, as I do every day on my way to work, and I saw his big truck with his logo on it. So his name is Mark Milton. He's a St. Louis-based tax attorney, accountant, and entrepreneur. He grew up across the river over in Illinois, and we're really glad. We've been trying for a while to get Mark on the show. His name is Mark Milton. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate all you guys do with Maximum Lawyer.
So, Mark, you're like one of the nicest people I know. So I'm going to try not to gush too much, but tell everybody about yourself. Go as far back as you want, but just talk about your journey and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, like Jim said, I grew up in Belleville, Illinois, across the river. Really kind of always wanted to go to law school, going back as far as I can recall, junior high school. But I really wanted to be a sports agent. That was sort of my calling as a young person who knew they weren't themselves going to be a professional athlete. I thought the next best thing would be to, be the next Jerry Maguire. And so that was sort of what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, I already had my eye on law school, and I talked to a lot of people that suggested that when you're looking at college, you might want to get a business degree, because the lawyers I talked to all wish they had a business background versus, going into political science or history in undergrad. And so when I started looking at colleges, that was sort of what I looked at, was going to business school, specifically doing accounting. My parents, back up. My older brother went to the University of Illinois. My parents basically said, you can go to the University of Illinois or pay the difference of going somewhere else, because we had in-state tuition. So I sort of begrudgingly went to the University of Illinois, got into the accounting program, had a great experience, did all the, ironically, the accounting program there is really geared around the audit side. It's one of the top programs. They the big four accounting firms all want to hire students out of the University of Illinois. And so I had quite a few opportunities in public accounting, one in which was actually up in Chicago. My junior year, I actually took off my junior semester of school to go do a busy season internship. And I spent half of that semester doing tax work and the other half doing audit. And I actually really enjoyed the tax work, kind of ironically looking back. Basically, I spent 8 weeks just cranking out 1040s for individuals. Typically, the partners might be handling the more complex tax returns for, the businesses, the corporations, and then us, the interns, would sort of handle the 1040s for the individuals and maybe their kids or whoever it might be. So I did that, did an audit internship with a big four firm here in St. Louis. And that was after actually I graduated from Illinois with my bachelor's degree. And really I was using that internship to see, if I really wanted to go into public accounting before going to law school, maybe work a few years. A lot of people, encourage people to maybe work before they go to law school. So I basically went into that internship summer of '07, both admitted to the master's program at Illinois to go back for my 5th year, or I was also admitted to go to SLU for law school. So I did the internship, really realized public accounting, audit at least, was not for me. Ended up enrolling at SLU that fall with Tyson as one of my classmates. It's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made for a number of reasons, because I also met my wife at SLU Law, so she's also a lawyer. But anyway, went to law school, and at that point, the whole sports agent thing was sort of not really what I had focused on. I really wanted to be a trial lawyer, Daniel Caffey, A Few Good Men. That was sort of what I had envisioned for myself. And so I really focused on, litigation courses and trial advocacy and all those things. And going into my second summer, so summer after my second year, I had a great summer associate gig with a firm in downtown St. Louis, Sandberg Phoenix, actually, and had a great experience. Love the firm, love the people. But this was also the summer of 2009, when, similar to kind of now, where a lot of uncertainty around the economy. And so they basically said, hey, we like you, but we just can't, like they normally would extend, full-time offers for, you coast into your third year law school with that job lined up. As you know, pretty much nobody had that for us going into our third years. And so I went into my third year not really knowing if I would get a job offer from them. So I started exploring other opportunities, one of which was the Department of Justice Honors Program, which I really knew nothing about. But Mary Pat McInnes, the great Mary Pat, and Career Services said, hey, you got this accounting background, but you also have all this, trial experience or litigation experience. You should really apply for this. So she connected me with a guy named Steve Schaefer, who's also a St. Louis guy, St. Louis U law grad, who had worked at the DOJ tax division as a trial lawyer, had gotten his job through the honors program. And so I talked with him before I applied, and he explained that, this is really, a litigation position, knowledge of, nuts and bolts. Because I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm not a tax lawyer. I never really thought of myself as being interested in becoming a tax lawyer. But he sold me on the job itself being, more so like, hey, this is a litigation position. You've got the IRS you work with. They kind of help you with the complicated issues. You get to travel the country. You get your own docket. I was like, that sounds, you get to live in D.C. D.C. has always been a place that I thought was very cool. I got to go there in high school, part of the presidential classroom program, where you get to, kind of the insider's view of Washington, D.C. And so I always, if I was ever going to leave St. Louis, D.C. was certainly a place that would have been appealing. So I applied. There are thousands of applicants. I threw my application in there, and they have you rank all the different components, civil rights, antitrust, immigration, whatever. And I was told that they don't really look at you unless you put their division as number one. So I literally just put tax division number one. I didn't even rank the other ones, and it worked. I got an interview. I think they interviewed like 60 people and hired 20 to start in August of 2010. So literally like a week after I took the bar exam, not knowing if I passed, like I moved to DC, and got an apartment, a shared apartment with a guy I didn't know, and started my job in August of 2010. As they called it, I was a law clerk when I started my job with the DOJ because I didn't have my bar license yet. So I moved out there in 2010, just an amazing experience to work for the Department of Justice. You get goosebumps, just, the main justice building there on Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, I didn't work there, but, we would have meetings and training and things there. And so it was pretty surreal. So, and what was really cool was I was a trial attorney in one of their civil trial sections, but I got assigned to the central region. So St. Louis, Eastern District of Missouri, Western District of Missouri, and Kansas City, Minnesota, kind of the 8th Circuit was my territory. So I got to travel back to St. Louis quite a bit, which was good because my wife was a year behind me in law school. So I could often coordinate travel, either, back to St. Louis. I'd get to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office when I would be in town, which was pretty neat, and got to know some of those folks over there. So that was, like I said, I got to litigate all kinds of different cases. We handled foreclosure actions, refund suits. We also went after fraudulent tax or allegedly fraudulent. Now that I'm on the defense side, I say allegedly fraudulent tax return preparers accused of wrongdoing. We'd go into federal court and ask for an injunction prohibiting them from preparing taxes for people. So a lot of people don't realize is the threshold or the requirements to become a paid return preparer are very minimal. Pretty much anyone can prepare taxes as long as they're, not a felon. They can get what's called a P10 and be able to prepare taxes for other people. And so there are a lot of charlatans out there and people who abuse, various credits like, for example, the earned income tax credit, which is very well intentioned, provides a refundable tax credit for low income individuals, but it also is very susceptible to fraud because it sounds counterintuitive, but actually in some cases, people would make up income in order to generate the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 refundable tax credit. They'd claim dependents that weren't really theirs. And these preparers would often, make a lot of money preparing these types of returns. So we would go after them on a civil basis, but also we would sometimes work with or alongside, they call them parallel proceedings. We would have criminal, either DOJ tax division folks or local U.S. attorney's offices who may also be prosecuting these individuals. So I got to see a lot of the criminal side, kind of the way that worked as well, which suited me nicely when I got into private practice, which is what I did in 2014. So with the DOJ, you have a 4-year commitment through the honors program. And so I knew we'd be out there for 4 years. I ended up getting married. My wife moved out there a year later after we got married. And we kind of knew we always wanted to move back to St. Louis. It was somewhat appealing to stay out there. I mean, there's probably more legal opportunities and, different types of opportunities in D.C., but I also found it appealing to kind of move back to St. Louis and be a little bit of a bigger fish in a smaller pond because there just aren't a lot of people that have the DOJ tax division experience here in St. Louis. So that's what I did. I ended up going to work as I was looking at opportunities back here. I met with various firms, but I was very attracted to Hush Blackwell. They had a white collar group that was made up of Catherine Hanaway, who was planning to run for governor, and Tyson knows I'm a political junkie, so that was very exciting to me to be working alongside of her. Matt Shelp, who I knew, I sort of knew before really looking at jobs, so he was kind of my point of contact there. And then Jeff Jensen, those were the 3 partners that I worked for. They basically hired me. And so we were the white collar group inside of Hush Blackwell. It was almost like a small firm within the firm, within the big firm. We sort of crossed over different practice areas and helped out as needed when white collar needs arose. And I became sort of the go-to tax guy in that group. So I feel like I'm rambling, but I can keep going with the narrative. So then after that, I spent 3 years at Hush. Great experience, great people. I was bringing in a lot of tax resolution cases, just sort of word of mouth, representing mostly individuals and small businesses. And when I say small business, I mean, self-employed people tend to find themselves in tax troubles. Lawyers are one of the biggest offenders because, if you're self-employed as a lawyer, you got to make estimated payments. And sometimes, it's a roller coaster in terms of revenue and expenses, cash flow. And so I've handled cases for lawyers who've gotten behind on taxes. And so over time, I kind of came to the realization that I really wanted to focus exclusively on tax resolution. I was not interested in handling, big time corporate tax disputes. I mean, those tend to be handled by firms on the coast anyway, just the nature of that kind of work. So I decided in September of 17, a little over 3 years ago, start my own firm. Literally, had lunch with Matt Shelp and said, "Hey, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start my own firm." I appreciate you guys' support. They were super supportive of the decision. I've stayed in touch with a lot of the people there. I was able to take some of the cases that I brought into the firm with me as tax resolution matters. A couple others that I'd worked, white collar cases that also came with me. So I had a good foundation when I left of cases and like cash flow, as we say. So I wasn't starting from scratch as some people, but it was still pretty scary to walk away from a salary. And I mean, nothing's certain in life. I mean, I don't think even at a big firm, like anything could happen. You could lose your job, and so I was never afraid of that necessarily. But it's definitely scary to kind of go out on your own and not know if the phone's going to ring, not know if you're going to get new cases, and just learning to build a business and develop systems. And that's why I feel like you guys have been very helpful to me with the Maximum Lawyer, Facebook page, getting, following all the different comments and suggestions has been really helpful these first 3 years for sure.
Mark, tell us about how you did make the phone ring. So you're out on your own now. You've been out 3 years. Where are your best cases coming from, and what's been the most successful for you?
I would say my best cases tend to come from word of mouth, either through other attorneys who have clients that have tax issues, law school classmates, that sort of thing. I've actually gotten a few of my bigger cases, ironically, from other tax lawyers in DC who I used to work with, who to them it was too small to handle. And for me, it was amazing to get, 5-figure, fee case, sometimes almost 6-figure cases that, for them, it's when they're billing $1,200 an hour and I can bill it $350 an hour. It makes it a lot easier to sign up those individual clients, and they're clients all over the country. I've had cases in, Virginia to Chicago, down to Florida. That's the one thing about tax resolution. I mean, you can, as a federal tax practitioner, you're sort of allowed to represent people before the IRS all across the country. And just marketing. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot with my wife always gives me trouble. She says I should have been a marketing executive because I just get ideas and I'm not afraid to fail with them. I go for it. Like the truck, Jim, you seen the truck? She was mortified when I pulled up after going to Dale's Signs and having them put the vinyl lettering on it. But it's a competitive industry. You hear the TV ads and the radio ads for Optimas and these other non-lawyer groups, frankly, that do the same kind of work. And I think charge fees that are in some cases more than what I would even charge. And in my experience, get less service and less perspective in terms of all the legal challenges that tax issues present. I mean, they really, some of them prey on these people. I mean, they troll the federal tax lien filings, and they send these very official looking notices, and they say, you've had a lien filed against you. You need to, call us immediately, or your Social Security will be levied, your bank accounts will be garnished. And they call, and then they, get signed up with some shadowy outfit out of Montana that claims to be a tax resolution group. And so it's a very competitive industry. We use social media. We've done some paid advertising on a local radio station here in town, 590. I've done a lot with. It was a show I listened to, the morning show. It's pretty vulgar at times, so sometimes I worry if I'm going to get a call from the Missouri Bar over sponsoring some of the content. Like they've had, adult entertainers on, and Lisa Ann, who you may or may not know who she is. I'm not gonna suggest anything, but I mean, she tweeted out something like, "I send all my tax questions to @STL Tax Lawyer." She tweeted at me one time because we had met through the various, she appears on the radio show and she heard one of my ads. So it's pretty funny. And Jim Hayes, he used to be on the show from, the Cardinals broadcaster, he came up with the phrase, "If you're with Milty, you're not guilty." And that sort of stuck. Milty's sort of been the nickname that's, come about. And Doug Vaughn from News Channel 4, he's on the show. He does all the live reads, which I find the live reads to be way more effective in terms of radio than doing recorded spots. I mean, we do have some recorded spots, but I really like the live reads. We ran some TV commercials last year on Charter, just kind of did that. That was okay. We probably didn't stick with it long enough. But one of the things I struggled with was I was so busy with the cases I had. I felt like, why am I spending all this money if I feel like I'm underperforming in some respects with what I have? So I kind of took a step back and tried to think bigger picture about how to grow the firm. And I hired somebody, my first full-time employee last year. He's been really helpful just handling some of the day-to-day operations stuff, but also, just helping me gather documents, helping me do intake, all the things that you sort of take for granted when you're at a big firm. And then when you're out on your own, you got to do everything. You got to refill the water, you got to pay the bills. I probably spend over 50% of my time just, doing administrative stuff, it seems like. So I'm trying to get away from that.
We're going to have to do something about that. But speaking of live reads, let me do my live read. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior receptionist service for law firms all over the country, trusted by many maximum lawyers, including me. At our immigration law practice, the hacking law practice, Smith AI's friendly U.S.-based receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish. They screen and schedule our new leads. They even take payment for consults. Best part is they don't just handle these conversations via phone. They also have live agents and chatbots. They capture leads through their chat widget. They serve as our friendly gatekeeper while my team and I work uninterrupted. It's pretty awesome. If you're in a solo or small firm, I know you'll appreciate this. Smith AI now offers 24/7 virtual receptionist answering calls, website chats, texts, and Facebook messages. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like me say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth. They're offering a free trial, and Maximum Lawyer listeners get an extra $100 discount with promo code MAXLAW100. Sign up and learn more at www.smithai. Trust me when I say don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI.
Well done, Jim.
Nice job. So, Mark, Jim and I were talking about you yesterday because we're sort of fascinated by what you do. So, like, how does this? I'm assuming that these people are coming to you because they got a letter from the IRS or a phone call or something like that, and then they owe money to the government. Like, so how do you get paid, and how does this process work?
So, I'll kind of go over my typical clients. Right, so the phone rings. I'm like, all right, this is a good one. So sometimes people will call and they'll say, I haven't filed my taxes in X number of years. Right. So, I mean, literally, I've had cases where 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I've had clients that haven't filed their tax return in 20 years, and they've been making money, living their life. Some of them have been totally, off the radar of the IRS. Some have been on the radar and have been subjected to, bank levies and garnishments over the years. And they literally just, we use the phrase, bury their head in the sand for as long as possible. And it's sort of incredible in some ways how long it can go on for. And sometimes there are other factors, people, whether it be an illness or a death or a lost job, can contribute to just kind of giving up and just saying, you know what, filing my taxes is sort of the last thing I care about at this point in my life for various reasons. So I just stopped doing it. And then, it kind of year over year, it snowballs. And then maybe there's another event in their life that makes them realize, hey, I got to get my life back on track. Maybe they get a new job. Maybe they have a new relationship and they don't want their new partner, new significant other to, deal with all these tax issues. They want to get them resolved. And so we typically start off, most of the clients don't even know how deep their hole is. So we typically will start off by doing a compliance review investigation. So we get power of attorney for them with the IRS. We're able to pull transcripts. Most of the time we do it sort of covertly. Other times we can contact the IRS on their behalf, and there's a practitioner line that we use to contact the IRS, and we fax them the power of attorney and say, hey, it's a new client, just calling to do a compliance review. And they'll literally pull up their account and they'll say, yeah, this person hasn't filed since 2014. They've got outstanding balances for these years. And so it kind of gives us an idea of, okay, how bad is this problem? And so we usually do a flat fee on that first phase, just to sort of the fact gathering investigative phase, so that, because we try to do flat fees when possible and those kinds of things. And so phase one is that investigative phase. And then from there, we usually draft a memo sort of outlining all their issues and saying, hey, you need to file, 6 years of taxes. We're going to charge you, because we also do tax preparation in-house. So we say we're going to charge you X per year to do those tax returns. Once we complete those, we'll know what your total debt is. And then we'll move on to phase three, which is the resolution phase. And as far as how do people pay, I mean, it's like anything. If you get into legal trouble, you're going to have to find a way to pay somebody to fix it, right? And I do have a lot of people that call, and I'm sort of amazed at times. They're like, yeah, I've got myself into this huge mess, and I'll quote them a price. And they're like, well, I can't afford that. I mean, I can't afford to pay anything. And it's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, I don't have inventory on my shelves. It's kind of all we can do is our, as they say, all we have is our time. And sometimes I'll work with people, do payment plans and things like that. But I kind of look at it like, hey, if your furnace goes out, you got a major problem, you're going to have to find a way to pay for it. And one of the things I've read about, and it may have been Tiger Tactics or one of the various books you guys have recommended, is, you're not a bank, right? Like, we're not financial institutions. So, you can't take your client's problems on as your own. And because I have been burned. I've been burned a few times early on with people that, I took on, and usually they're friends, quote unquote friends, or friends of friends. And you feel compelled to help them because you can help them, but you start digging a hole yourself, right? I mean, it's never as easy as what people think it is to try to resolve any kind of legal issue. And if you have tax problems, I mean, you have legal problems. I mean, there's no way around that. And so I've tried to be understanding with clients, but also firm and, stating my prices. I try to be transparent. If we do hourly, I usually take a big deposit up front. I use a security deposit model. I don't do a retainer. It's something Hush did that I don't think a lot of people do, but basically it's like, hey, I want a security deposit up front that sits in my client trust account. And the expectation is when I bill you for hourly time, those bills get paid, and we only apply the deposit if your bills go unpaid, versus the traditional retainer where you're sort of drawing from it as you go. I don't know if it's really that big of a difference, but I feel like that gives me protection. At least, all right, if I get 10 hours into this, and that's usually how I price the deposit, is I figure, all right, it's going to protect me for 10 hours of work. And you kind of know right away then when you send that first invoice, if that first invoice doesn't get paid, it's sort of a red flag, right? Like, okay, this is a client that's, maybe going to be an issue down the road and paying their bills. So I've been very conscious of not getting burned, not getting too deep into cases without having some assurance that I'm going to get paid. Because, and I tell people this, if I'm doing work for them for free, then that's work I can't be getting paid for. Time I can't get back, right? So I'm always mindful of that. And overall, I feel like I've done pretty well with collection, and I haven't really had any major issues of unpaid bills. But I think it's because I have been very conscious of it and very intentional with the way I screen, the way I, if I'm not comfortable with a client or I feel like it's not a good fit, I will tell them that, and I will, decline the representation. So, and then we also I've handled all types of different payroll tax disputes, companies that get into a cash flow pinch. Surprisingly, they're withholding money from their employees, the federal income tax withholdings, Social Security, and they hold that money in trust and are required to pay it over to the government. Well, sometimes when a business is struggling, they don't make those payments. And so then they end up going belly up, and the individuals at the companies can be held personally liable for that money, which can add up pretty quickly. So we handle a lot of payroll tax disputes. It's known as a trust fund recovery penalty that can be assessed against individuals at a company who you would think otherwise wouldn't be liable for corporate debts, but that's one thing they could be liable for. And the first case that landed on my desk when I was at DOJ, while I was still a law clerk, was a trust fund recovery penalty refund suit. It was brought in the Western District of Missouri. My boss gave it to me because he knew I was from, the Midwest. And I ended up first chairing that all the way to a jury trial. It was sort of crazy the way that case played out over 2.5 years. And the facts were pretty wild. You had the owner of the company. It was a mobile display company. The owner got in a bar fight and killed a guy. The guy, he punched a guy, he fell over and died. So the owner of the business goes to prison for 9 months on manslaughter charges. The accountant is trying to keep the business afloat while he's in jail. They're running up all these payroll tax liabilities, not filing their quarterly payroll tax returns. And ultimately the company goes belly up, and the IRS assesses and he was a part-time bookkeeper. They assessed him the trust fund recovery penalty, about $200,000 worth of unpaid payroll taxes. And so we went all the way to a jury trial, and the jury found him liable for the full amount of the payroll taxes. And the office manager, it was kind of funny, she was unrepresented, and she also, we went to trial against both of them. She won. So the guy who had the lawyer, the bookkeeper, was found liable, but the office manager, who was unrepresented, pro se, in the jury trial, she won at trial. So I always say I lost my first trial to a pro se party, but we won the one that I think mattered the most. So that was a pretty amazing experience to get to do that 2.5 years out of law school. And then criminal law. I've handled a number of criminal tax cases. One of the quotes on my website is, something about how, my best cases are the ones you don't read about in the paper, because often people don't know if someone's, under criminal investigation. And we've had several where, criminal CI, Criminal Investigation Division, is involved, and we've gotten them to agree not to pursue criminal charges against the individuals. Now, they still have the civil aspect of it to deal with, but at least, in those gray area cases, I always tell people, my number one job here is to keep you out of prison. The second piece is, how do we resolve this? Because, not filing your tax returns is a crime. It's generally a misdemeanor, but if it's willful, it's a felony. And now there are relatively few prosecutions, but, those are things where, when I talk about these resolution groups, those are things that I don't think, number one, they can't represent people in criminal proceedings, but I don't know if in some cases they get the best advice on, kind of the bigger picture of what all is really at stake.
This is fascinating stuff. All right. So we are actually out of time. So I am going to wrap things up.
Sure.
You get the award for the longest talker, but it's all good stuff. So I love it. This is great stuff.
Well, sorry for my screen. I had my computer queued up and I don't know what's going on. My thing's not responding. So I had to go with the iPhone with the cracked screen. So I think that's why it looks like I'm in a fog over here.
I love it. This is perfect. No, it's like, so Jim and I we always kind of joke, like the hardest interviews are the ones where the guest does not talk a lot. You're easy. You make this easy. So this is great. But
sorry.
You're good. It's perfect. So before I do, I want to remind everyone to go and join us with the Guild, maxlawguild.com. We got the link up, so maxlawguild.com. And then also, if you don't mind giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. Jimbo, what is your hack of the week?
Today we're going to talk about, for my hack of the week, the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators. I think too many people see what money rolls in at the end of the month and they say, oh, I had a good month. And I think that if they spent a little bit more time looking at leading indicators, which are the things that you can do, the things that you can control, the things that you can measure to see if you're doing all the right things to move your firm forward, as opposed to the lagging indicators, which are, oh, how many cases did we sign up this month? Or, oh, how much money did we bring in? I think really drilling down and identifying what are the most important leading indicators for our firm, it's going to really help people move their firms forward.
Absolutely. You're so right about that, Jimbo. All right, Mark. So you know the routine. Do you have a tip or a hack for us?
A hack? Well, I would, like I talked about earlier, I think just being selective with clients, I think, is something that lawyers, especially when you get out on your own or you got a smaller firm, you're always wanting to bring in new clients, but take the time to screen. If my gut, every time I've had a gut feeling about a client, it's usually proven to be true. Even if I reluctantly took on a new case, every time it seems like it becomes, that my premonition sort of come true. So be selective, protect yourself, get a deposit. If they can't afford it, don't be afraid to say no.
You're so right. It's so true. I think it's because we put it on the back burner too. It's one of those things where we put those cases on the back burner a little bit, and they don't care as much because they're not paying you anything. There's a lot of problems with it, or paying you less than what you normally would. So, all right. So my tip is, it's too late for Prime Day, because we already had Prime Day on Amazon. We need some stuff for some new employees, and I saved hundreds of dollars on getting those things. And I had a list of things that we needed for the office, both offices, and I saved a bunch of money. But I did see on my Amazon app, that they're having some sort of holiday days coming up or something like that in Amazon. So if you need things for your office, like, now's a really good time to save a lot of money. If you need some office supplies, or we bought computers and printers and scanners and all that. We saved a lot of money. So I highly recommend doing that now, because you can save a lot of money. Mark?
And I'll add to that, Tyson, also a good time before the year end, load up with what you're going to need for 2021, because if you're a cash basis taxpayer, you can write that all off, defer some tax by loading up on the front end. So
also a fantastic point. You're the tax guy too. This is perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So,
Totally legitimate.
Love it. All right, Mark, thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for all you do. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.